The components of child abuse include a child, defined as an individual under 18 years of age, and a perpetrator, a person who acts or fails to act. Pennsylvania law currently defines child abuse as an act or failure to act committed intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly to a person under the age of 18. There are 10 categories of child abuse. We will review these categories of child abuse in the next segment of this module. Meanwhile, check the glossary for a full description of each of the categories and exclusions from the law. The Child Protective Services Law lists some exclusions to what can be deemed as child abuse. For example, individuals in a caregiving role can use reasonable force to maintain order or control, break up fights, prevent injury to self or others or property, or to obtain weapons or contraband. Whether or not an exclusion applies would be determined by the children and youth worker assigned to conduct the investigation and does not excuse a mandated reporter from making the report of suspected abuse. Let's start with who can be a perpetrator, keeping in mind that a mandated reporter does not have to know who the alleged perpetrator is to make a report. This list applies to a perpetrator of commission, someone committing an act of abuse. The definition of perpetrator includes a parent of the child, a spouse or former spouse of the child's parent, paramour or former paramour of the child's parent. A perpetrator can be an individual 14 years of age or older who resides in the same home as the child, or is responsible for the child's welfare, or has direct contact with children. A perpetrator can be a person having direct contact with children as an employee of child care services, a school, or through a program, activity, or service. Perpetrators also include an individual 18 years of age or older who does not reside in the same home as the child, but is related within the third degree of consanguinity, which means descended from the same ancestor as another person, or affinity by birth or adoption to the child. School employees and independent contractors who have direct contact with children are now considered a person responsible for the child's welfare and could be named as a perpetrator. A recent addition to this list is a person 18 or older who engages a child in severe forms of trafficking that includes trafficking in persons or sex trafficking. Both labor trafficking and sex trafficking fall under human trafficking. For a person to be a perpetrator by omission, failing to protect, the Child Protective Service Law identifies parent of the child, spouse or former spouse of the child's parent, paramour or former paramour of the child's parent, person 18 years of age or older and responsible for the child's welfare, or a person 18 years of age or older who resides in the same home as the child. A person legally obligated to report suspicions of child abuse is called a mandated reporter. Early childhood professionals are mandated reporters. A mandated reporter is required to make a report of suspected child abuse if he or she has reasonable cause to suspect that a child is a victim of child abuse under any of the following circumstances. The mandated reporter, paid or unpaid, comes into contact with the child in the course of employment, occupation, and practice of a profession, or through a regularly scheduled program, activity, or service, is a person responsible for the child's welfare or has direct contact with children. The mandated reporter is directly responsible for the care, supervision, guidance, or training of the child. An independent contractor who has direct contact with children. A person makes a specific disclosure to the mandated reporter that an identifiable child is the victim of child abuse. An individual 14 years of age or older makes a specific disclosure to the mandated reporter that the individual has committed child abuse. Mandated reporters must report suspected abuse, regardless of whether the perpetrator is known or unknown. Also, a child does not need to come before the mandated reporter to make a report of suspected child abuse. People who are not mandated reporters are described as permissive reporters. A permissive reporter is someone able and encouraged but not required by law to report suspected child abuse. If you suspect abuse, you must make a report to Childline immediately and then notify the person in charge of the facility or the designated agent. Upon notification, this person is expected to facilitate the cooperation of the institution, school, facility, or agency with the investigation of the report. The Child Protective Services Law states that any attorneys affiliated with an agency, institution, organization, or other entity, including a school or regularly established religious organization that is responsible for the care, supervision, guidance, or control of children, are now listed as mandated reporters. Some communications that are privileged, as defined by Pennsylvania laws, do not relieve a mandated reporter of the duty to report suspected child abuse. Other types of communication are considered confidential and protected, as defined by Pennsylvania laws, when made to an attorney or clergyman. Mandated reporters include an employee of a child care service who has direct contact with children in the course of employment, an individual paid or unpaid who, on the basis of the individual's role as an integral part of a regularly scheduled program, activity, or service, is a person responsible for the child's welfare or has direct contact with children. An individual supervised or managed by a person listed above who has direct contact with children in the course of employment. An independent contractor who has direct contact with children. We will review how to file a report of suspected child abuse later in this module. For now, it's important to understand that most of the time, adults do not intend to harm a child. Parents and teachers can injure a child while administering punishment in a misguided approach to discipline. Sometimes adults are stressed in ways that affect their ability to respond to a child's challenging behaviors. In the next topic, we'll look at how you can help parents use positive behaviors that will keep their children safe.